we also have a question about keeping the Sabbath day holy. So this is someone, she is from the conservative holiness movement. So the huge movement, I think actually bigger than our holiness Pentecostal movement, that
The
denies
original holiness movement.
the original, yeah, really before Pentecostalism was added into holiness doctrine. But this movement, and I heard it growing up too, they're using all the scriptures from the Sabbath day in the Old Testament and saying this is exactly how we're supposed to treat Sunday. This questioner is asking, is this biblical? You know, she loves the principle of a day of rest and fellowshipping with other believers, but can we really use all these Old Testament rules about the Sabbath to say this is how Christians have to treat Sunday?
Yeah. So the broader question is, how do we understand the Old Testament and Old Testament in general, Mosaic law in particular? And I wrote about this in my piece on how do we obey the Old Testament. So my understanding of this has actually changed in the past few years, because there's this idea that there's all this law in the Old Testament that's good and it's moral, and then there's all this ceremonial and civil law in the Old Testament, and we're supposed to go through with tweezers and we're supposed to pick the moral laws out and apply them to our lives and discard the civil and ceremonial ones. The only problem with that understanding is, well, there are a few problems. One, it's completely not biblical. There's nothing in Scripture where the laws are put in different categories. And it's like, well, there's the ceremonial and the civil. So we can go back through and categorize them. But in the Old Testament, there's no differentiation. The laws are all jumbled together. Laws about, whether or not you can mix linen and wool are right there next to laws about whether you can murder or commit adultery, and all kinds of laws that are kind of on the border, like the one I like to point out that nobody talks about is the laws preventing sexual relations with a woman within 7 days of her period, which shows up as an abomination and shows up in so many different places as this is a terrible thing to do. So there are all these laws and they're just in a big spaghetti. And it's not easy to just pull one strand out of the spaghetti and say, well, these are the ones we have to follow and these are the ones we don't. And I think the more consistent interpretation is just to say Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament law. It's done. It's done. Not abolished.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about what fulfilled.
Right. Well, this is why I wrote a whole argument where I explain all this in detail. So I'm not attempting to, I could read you that article, but that wouldn't be the purpose of this video. So I lay out that there's a difference between fulfilled and abolished. And I use the example of a mortgage contract, and I think a contract makes sense in light of the Old Testament covenant. If I abolish my mortgage contract, I tell the bank, I'm not paying on this anymore. Maybe there was some illegal activity. Maybe I'm just being a bad homeowner. But that's to abolish the contract. But to fulfill the contract is to pay the debt. And once I pay the debt on the house, I no longer owe the house payment. The mortgage, you can burn it up at that point, actually. People do, have a mortgage burning celebration. It's fulfilled. It's no longer in effect. Not because it was abolished, but because it was fulfilled. So you can go through the Old Testament with tweezers and try to pick out the moral laws, but there's just no way to do it that's consistent. And you're going to, laws about, well, you're not supposed to charge interest to anyone who's from your nation. That appears so many times. You can charge interest to foreigners, but not interest to anyone who's of your same nationality, right? There are moral arguments made for it in the Old Testament. Lots of moral arguments. Is that a moral law? Are we forbidding banking?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, the 10 Commandments. Do not commit adultery. Cool. Also, do not make any graven images. Well, that would include the Statue of Liberty and the Lincoln Memorial, right? It's right there with Sabbath and do not murder. So then what am I saying? Am I saying that we have complete license No, I'm saying the New Testament lays out all the principles and rules that you need to be successful in life. And you're only going to come up with about a, 5-10% difference in what rules you get if you just read the New Testament versus if you read the New Testament and the Old Testament with tweezers,
Right.
trying to add some extra ones into the mix.
And the Old Testament, you're not saying it's not relevant. Of course, we want to study it and learn from it and all this, but we're not trying to nitpick those 613 laws and say this one's for us, this one's not for us.
Right. And Jesus had a habit of taking the Old Testament laws and giving us a broader principle. So he takes do not commit adultery. He says don't even look at a woman in a lustful way. Well, that covers both.
Right.
Don't have lustful intent, because you cannot commit adultery without lustful intent.
Right.
And Jesus specifically explains the principle for the Sabbath, getting back to the original question. Man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man. So what's the principle? Jesus is saying rest is made for man. God set it out from the beginning of creation. You should take some rest. And whether that looks like 1 day in 7, whether that looks like building margin into your life, because you can burn yourself out even if you take 1 day in 7 off, but you have to follow that principle of Sabbath rest that was laid out.
And do you remember the experiment where, I can't remember which country, I want to say it was a Nordic country. Okay. But where they were trying to shift to a 10-day week?
They went to a 10-day week, yeah. And that was after the French Revolution, so, late 1700s. And that was when they were turning the Cathedral of Notre Dame into the Temple of Reason, right? So they tried to turn rationality into a religion. Anyways, they went to a 10-day week and it ended very badly for them.
Yeah, everyone was exhausted. The cattle couldn't work.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
So they switched back. It's cool because this 7-day week is the only thing that the entire world does that is directly attributable to the Bible.
Right.
Right? Because the month is based on the moon, the sun is, causes the year, but the week, that's just scripture. That's the only reason we have a 7-day week. And I think it works out really well. So, but I don't think we have to get super wrapped around the axle on whether or not we can pick up sticks on Sunday.
Right, especially when you see Jesus letting the disciples pick the grain on Sunday. And that's why the Pharisees were so frustrated. They're like, you're not keeping these laws.
You're specifically breaking the law. He's like, no, I'm fulfilling the law, and a principle is coming here, so follow that.
Yeah, absolutely.